In the summer of 1878, scorching winds carrying red dust swept through Redstone Creek, a small town nestled deep in the American West, where silver mines glimmered under the sun and the sound of hammers echoed like the heartbeat of the land. Redstone Creek was not a place for faint hearts. It was a land of big dreams, where people shouted to drown out the sound of drilling, where the clink of coins in pockets measured success, and the laughter ringing in saloons was the common language. Silence here was foreign, a sign of failure of those who didn't belong. But on one sweltering noon, when red dust clung to the air, a woman named Eleanor Grayson stepped down from a swaying stagecoach, carrying silence like an invisible cloak, ready to face a land that did not welcome her. The stagecoach stopped in front of the Redstone Star Hotel, a two-story wooden building with a sagging porch, standing defiant like a grumpy old man guarding the town's entrance. Eleanor gripped her old leather valise tightly, her fingers pale from clenching too hard. She wore a plain ash-gray dress, high-necked, modest, with no jewelry to draw attention. Her golden hair was tightly pinned at the nape of her neck, and her deep blue eyes, like the Montana sky, quietly looked down, as if to avoid curious stares. The driver, a weathered old man with a raspy voice, shouted, "Redstone Creek, end of the line." Eleanor looked up, taking a deep breath, but her heart still pounded like a drum in her chest. The other passengers quickly left the coach, stretching after the dusty three-day journey from Willow Springs. Eleanor was the last to stand, smoothing her dress with trembling hands, stepping onto the fiery red dirt of Main Street. Redstone Creek assaulted her senses at once. Raucous laughter from a nearby saloon, the clatter of hooves on the road, the calls of merchants, and the shouts of children running past freight wagons. A group of miners, faces smudged with coal dust, emerged from a shop, pickaxes slung over their shoulders, their booming voices recounting a new silver find. Eleanor shrank back, her shoulders hunching as if to shrink amidst this noisy symphony. That must be her. A sharp female voice cut through the din from a porch across the street. Doesn't look like much. Thought Caldwell would pick someone more striking. Another voice replied, not bothering to hide its scorn. Eleanor pretended not to hear, though her cheeks burned. She had braced for whispers, but she hadn't expected them to come so swiftly and cruelly. She had yet to meet the man who brought her here, James Caldwell. Eleanor's hand slipped into her pocket, touching the neatly folded letter that had changed her life. James Caldwell, 39, widower, owner of the Bright Star Mine, seeking a virtuous wife to manage his household and be a companion. The letter was brief, practical like her response. She scanned the bustling street, searching for a man who might be James. The letter promised he'd meet her at the stagecoach stop, but no one approached. Minutes passed, and the whispers around her grew thicker. Caldwell's new mail-order girl. Looks like a field mouse, won't last a week at the manor. Eleanor stood still, statue-like beside her valise, her gaze fixed on her dusty shoes. Miss Grayson, a deep male voice tinged with impatience sounded behind her. Eleanor turned to face a tall, broad-shouldered man, with a neatly trimmed black beard flecked with gray. He wore an expensive but dusty suit, as if he just left an important meeting to come here. "Yes," she replied, her voice so soft it was nearly carried away by the wind. Her hand extended instinctively, hovering awkwardly between them. James Caldwell glanced at her hand, then her face, his eyes sharp as a blade. He shook her hand perfunctorily, his rough palm gripping briefly before letting go. "You're too quiet," he said bluntly without preamble. Eleanor nodded, trying not to flinch under his gaze. "Your letter was different." "Wordier," he frowned. "Can you talk?" "I mean properly, yes." Eleanor forced herself to speak louder. "I can speak, Mr. Caldwell. But I only speak when necessary." His frown deepened, his eyes scanning her from head to toe, clearly assessing and finding her wanting. "Here, Miss Grayson, everything requires words. Redstone Creek isn't a place for whisperers." He turned, signaling a nearby boy to handle her valise. "The carriage is over there." Eleanor followed, her shoes tapping lightly on the dirt road, trying to ignore the curious stares from passers-by. The carriage ride to the Caldwell Manor was a tense journey. The hard wooden seat lacked cushioning, the bumpy road forced her to grip the side, but the silence between them was more uncomfortable. James Caldwell tried to start a conversation a few times, but each of his questions received only short, soft replies from Eleanor. "Why did you answer my advertisement?" he asked as they left the last of the town's buildings behind, the noisy saloons and wooden shops fading away. Eleanor gazed at the vast landscape before her, red rock hills, deep green pine forests, and a river glittering like a silver ribbon winding through the valley. "I needed a place to go," she answered honestly. "My father died last year. The school where I taught closed. Your letter gave me a purpose." "You were a teacher." A flicker of hope crossed his face. "Yes, for young children." 6 years. Then you can't have been too quiet in a classroom full of kids. "Children don't judge silence like adults do," Eleanor replied, her voice carrying a hint of warmth for the first time. "They understand when words aren't necessary." The hope on his face faded. "Redstone Creek isn't children, Miss Grayson. I need a wife who can hold her own at gatherings, charm investors, represent the bright star mine at social events." Eleanor's hands tightened in her lap. "Your letter spoke of a companion and household manager, not speeches to crowds." Caldwell exhaled sharply, his face tense. "Perhaps I wasn't clear enough, or you didn't read closely." They crested a hill, and the Caldwell Manor came into view, a massive stone house with carved wooden columns, a wide porch wrapping around it like outstretched arms. It should have been grand, welcoming, but to Eleanor, it felt like a fortress, a place where she would be constantly tested and found wanting. "It's not too late," Caldwell said, reining in the horses. "The stagecoach heads east tomorrow morning. I can arrange a ticket for you." Eleanor looked at the house, then at the wilderness surrounding it, 600 miles from what she once called home, with only enough money in her pocket to last a week. "You're rejecting me because I'm quiet. I'm being practical, Miss Grayson. I need a wife who can command a room, make investors listen, speak with authority when I'm down in the mines. And you," he gestured toward her, "are just a whisper. Redstone Creek will crush you." The carriage stopped in front of the house. A middle-aged woman stepped onto the porch, wiping her hands on her apron, her eyes a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "Mrs. Harper, my housekeeper," Caldwell introduced. "She'll prepare dinner. You can rest tonight. I'll take you back to town in the morning." Eleanor didn't move. "You haven't given me a chance. I don't need to waste time on something I know won't work." His voice held no malice, just plain fact. "Better to send you back than let you suffer here. I have nowhere to go back to, Mr. Caldwell." He sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Then I'll advance you money to board in town until you find work." "I'm not heartless, Miss Grayson, just practical." The word practical stabbed her like a knife. Practical, that's what Eleanor had always prided herself on. Practical, discreet, never causing trouble, never raising her voice. But now, that practicality was her failure. She stepped down from the carriage unassisted, her back straight, chin raised. She would not cry, not here, not in front of a man who had judged her so swiftly. "Mrs. Harper," Caldwell called loudly. "Prepare dinner for a guest. Miss Grayson will leave in the morning." The housekeeper's face flickered with surprise, then understanding, then pity. Eleanor felt each emotion, like a lash against her pride. "Your letter didn't mention you needed an actress, Mr. Caldwell," she said, her voice soft but sharp. "Perhaps you should clarify that in your next advertisement to avoid wasting others' time." For the first time, James Caldwell looked flustered. He cleared his throat, adjusted his collar, and nodded. "Perhaps I should. Come inside. It's been a long day." As she followed him up the wooden steps, Eleanor felt a small fire ignite within her. She had come to the West seeking purpose, stability, a place to belong. Instead, she faced rejection before she could prove herself. Tomorrow she would return to Redstone Creek, alone, with no prospects, in a town that valued noise above all. But Redstone Creek was about to learn that silence was not weakness. It was a strength waiting to be discovered. Dawn broke over Redstone Creek, the sunrise painting the wooden rooftops and dusty streets red. Eleanor stood on the porch of the Redstone Star Hotel, watching the town stir to life. A restless night left dark circles under her eyes, but the resolve in her heart burned stronger. James Caldwell had kept his word, escorting her to the hotel with enough money for 2 weeks' board and a curt apology before vanishing back to his hilltop manor. The hotel's owner, Martha Coleman, a sharp woman with silver hair tied tightly and hands calloused from work, had sized Eleanor up the previous night. "Another bride who didn't make it?" she asked bluntly. "Caldwell's not the first to send them back. Won't be the last." Now, watching the bustling street filled with miners, merchants, and hurried housewives, Eleanor knew she had exactly 14 days to find her place in Redstone Creek, or face destitution in a strange town. She gripped a small notebook where she'd listed possibilities in neat handwriting: school, shop, private tutor. Redstone Creek was growing fast. Surely there was room for someone hardworking, even if she disliked idle chatter. Taking a deep breath, she stepped off the porch, merging into the crowd, ignoring curious stares and whispers. The girl Caldwell rejected didn't last a day. Quiet as a ghost, Eleanor kept her eyes forward, her steps steady. The Redstone Creek School sat on the town's outskirts, a simple wooden building with a small bell tower and windows glinting in the early light. Children's laughter rang from the playground as she approached, the sound briefly easing her heart. This was familiar territory. Inside the classroom, chaos reigned. Nearly 40 children of all ages were scattered across the room, some focused on books, others chasing each other between desks, while a young teacher, looking exhausted, tried to restore order. "Open your arithmetic books to page 32. "Billy Carter, put that mouse down." "Emma, stop pulling Lily's hair." The teacher, perhaps only a few years older than Eleanor, had flushed cheeks and desperate eyes. She looked up as Eleanor entered, relief flooding her face at the sight of another adult. "Oh, thank heavens. Are you from the school board? I've been begging for an assistant all year." Eleanor shook her head, but before she could explain, the teacher pressed on, words tumbling like a waterfall. "I'm Clara Bennett. I have 38 students across 7 grades, and the school board expects me to manage them all, teach for exams, and teach them manners." "Impossible." A paper ball sailed across the room, narrowly missing Clara's head. "Johnny Reed, enough." Eleanor observed the chaos, noting the mix of boredom and mischief on the children's faces. Without thinking, she stepped to the teacher's desk, picked up a small handbell, and rang it 3 times. The clear sound cut through the noise. The children turned, startled, eyeing the stranger curiously. Eleanor set the bell down, raised her hands, and began a slow sequence of gestures. A finger to her lips for silence, hands lowered for calm, then pointing to her eyes and ears, and finally crossing her arms over her chest. The children stared, captivated by the wordless language. One by one they quieted, returning to their seats with only a few whispers remaining. "How did you do that?" Clara whispered, astonished. "Hand signs," Eleanor replied softly. "I taught deaf children back east. Sometimes the most effective communication needs no words." Clara's mouth fell open, staring at the now attentive class. "Are you looking for work, Miss Grayson?" Eleanor Grayson. "And yes, I am." "Well then, Miss Grayson, I don't care if you never speak another word. If you can keep these kids quiet, I'll hire you on the spot." Clara lowered her voice. "The pay's not much, but there's a small room behind the school. It's yours if you want it." For the first time since arriving in Redstone Creek, Eleanor felt a genuine smile spread across her face. "I'll take it." The morning passed in a flurry of activity as Eleanor settled into her new role. Clara assigned her the younger children, grades 1 through 3, while she focused on the older students. Eleanor's group sat in a circle in a corner of the room, their small faces upturned as she taught letters and numbers, her voice soft but clear. When words failed to engage, she used her hands, turning lessons into games with signs that made the children giggle and mimic her. By noon they called her Miss Eleanor and vied to sit closest to her. "You have a gift," Clara remarked during lunch, as the children played outside under the older students' supervision. "Where did you learn those hand signs?" Eleanor hesitated, unused to sharing personal details. But Clara's sincerity opened her up. "My sister was born deaf," she explained. "My parents didn't know how to talk to her, so I made up signs. Later, I learned American Sign Language from books and people who knew it. And you taught deaf children in a regular school?" "Not quite. I taught at a small school in Vermont, but took on deaf children privately. No one else wanted to teach them." A shadow crossed her face. People thought their silence was a disability, not a different way of living. Clara studied her thoughtfully. "People judge what they don't understand." "Yes," Eleanor agreed, thinking of James Caldwell and his blunt rejection. By the end of the school day, Eleanor's voice was hoarse from more talking than she'd done in months, but her heart felt lighter. Clara showed her the small room behind the school, a simple space with a narrow bed, a washstand, a bookshelf, and a window overlooking a field. "Not much," Clara apologized. "But it's private. The school board pays for firewood in winter." "It's perfect," Eleanor assured her, already picturing how she'd arrange her few belongings. After Clara left, Eleanor returned to the hotel to retrieve her valise. Mrs. Coleman was surprised to hear she'd been hired at the school. "The school? I thought they didn't need anyone." She gave Eleanor a sharp look. "Though I suppose if anyone could make those kids listen, it'd be someone who can talk without shouting." Eleanor smiled faintly, paid for her single night's stay, and asked about transporting her valise. "There's Baxter's service down the street," Mrs. Coleman suggested, "but he charges an arm and a leg." "Any other options?" Eleanor asked, mindful of her limited funds. Mrs. Coleman hesitated, then lowered her voice. "There's Tucker's place, near the edge of town. He's a blacksmith. Might haul your valise cheap, maybe for a meal. But he's odd. Completely deaf." Eleanor's head snapped up. "A deaf blacksmith, strange, right? But he's good. Just don't expect conversation." Eleanor felt a surge of curiosity. "Where do I find Mr. Tucker?" Following Mrs. Coleman's directions, Eleanor walked to the town's edge, where houses grew sparse and the wilderness encroached. The steady clang of hammer on metal led her to a large blacksmith shop, its front open, smoke curling from a stone chimney. Inside, a tall, broad-shouldered man stood with his back to her, raising a hammer in a mesmerizing rhythm, each strike sending sparks flying. He wore canvas pants and a leather apron, his skin glistening with sweat in the firelight. Eleanor stepped into his line of sight, keeping a safe distance from the hot forge. The blacksmith looked up, his hammer pausing mid-air, deep brown eyes widening in surprise, then narrowing with curiosity. He set the hammer down, straightened, his gaze cautious but not hostile. Caleb Tucker was not what Eleanor expected. He was younger than she'd imagined, about 32, with a chiseled face, a scar running along his temple, disappearing into a short beard. His black hair was tied back, revealing ears marked by old burned scars. Eleanor took a deep breath, raised her hands, and signed, "Hello, I'm Eleanor Grayson." Shock flashed across his face, his calloused hands freezing as he realized she was signing. He responded slowly, "You know signs." His movements were rough, direct, fitting a man who worked with iron. Eleanor nodded, smiling. "Yes, I learned from my sister." She was deaf. Was, he signed, catching the past tense. "She died 6 years ago." Fever, his expression softened, his eyes showing understanding. "I'm sorry." Then, with a hint of suspicion, "Why are you in Redstone Creek?" The question was too complex for her signs, especially with their differing styles. Eleanor pulled a small slate and chalk from her bag. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the slate. He nodded, wiping his hands on a rag before taking it. Eleanor wrote, "I came as a mail-order bride for James Caldwell, but he rejected me for being too quiet. Now I'm a teacher's assistant. I need help moving my valise from the hotel to the school." Caleb Reed, his eyebrows rising at Caldwell's name. He wrote beneath her words, "Caldwell's a fool, likes hearing his own voice." "I'll help you." When, Eleanor felt warmth spread through her. For the first time in Redstone Creek, she'd found someone who understood the value of silence. "Now," she signed. Caleb glanced at his unfinished work, then nodded. "Now," he agreed, reaching for his coat. The wagon rattled along the bumpy road to the school, Eleanor's valise secured in the back. Caleb handled the reins with skill, his eyes flicking between the road and Eleanor's hands as she signed simple questions about Redstone Creek. Their conversation was slow, punctuated by pauses when signs grew tricky, and they switched to the slate. These silences were comfortable, unlike the tension with Caldwell. "How long have you lived in Redstone Creek?" Eleanor signed. Caleb thought for a moment, then answered, 10 years. "Came after the war." Eleanor nodded, catching the shadow that crossed his face at the mention of the Civil War. "Were you born deaf?" she asked, then worried she'd been too forward. Caleb shook his head. "Cannon," he signed, pointing to his ears. Gettysburg, Eleanor understood. The war had stolen his hearing, as illness had stolen her sister. Both losses had led them here, to a town that didn't welcome silence. When they reached the school, Clara Bennett appeared on the porch, surprised to see Caleb. "Mr. Tucker," she greeted, her voice hesitant. "This is unexpected." Caleb nodded politely, then began unloading Eleanor's valise. "You know Mr. Tucker?" Clara asked softly. "We just met," Eleanor explained. "Mrs. Coleman suggested he could help." "I didn't know," she trailed off, unsure how to explain the instant connection with Caleb. "He rarely interacts with townsfolk," Clara whispered. "Keeps to himself. Some find him intimidating." Eleanor glanced at Caleb, now lifting her valise with effortless strength. To her, he wasn't intimidating, just quietly precise in his movements. "He's very kind," she said simply. Once the valise was carried into Eleanor's small room, Clara excused herself to prepare lessons, leaving the two at the school's entrance. Eleanor offered payment, but Caleb shook his head firmly. "No," he signed. "Free, then let me thank you properly," she replied. "Dinner." I can cook. Surprise, then delight, flickered across his face. He nodded. Tomorrow, he suggested. I have work today. They agreed on a time, and as Caleb climbed onto the wagon, Eleanor felt a strange reluctance to see him go. He was a new presence in her life, but already represented something vital, understanding without judgment. The days that followed formed a new rhythm for Eleanor. By day, she taught, the children progressing swiftly under her quiet but steady guidance. In the evenings, she prepared lessons or visited Caleb's forge. At first, she brought practical excuses, a broken door hinge, a question about heating the classroom, but soon they dropped the pretenses. She brought fresh-baked bread or homemade jam, and they sat outside the forge as dusk fell, conversing in signs and writing. These meetings didn't escape Redstone Creek's notice. Gossip spread, some amused, some disapproving. Birds of a feather, Mrs. Coleman remarked to hotel guests. Both odd but harmless. James Caldwell, while in town for supplies, saw Eleanor signing with Caleb outside the general store and frowned deeply. "Strange company you keep, Miss Grayson," he commented, his voice loud enough for the street to hear. Eleanor only nodded politely and resumed her conversation with Caleb, who showed no sign of concern. "He's still watching you," Caleb signed later. "Curious? The failed bride," Eleanor replied. Caleb's expression turned serious. "You didn't fail." "He did." Autumn arrived, painting the hills around Redstone Creek red. Eleanor's place in the community slowly shifted. Parents noticed their children's progress, especially the mischievous ones who now responded to her approach. Some mothers asked her to teach basic sign language, offering baked goods or sewing fabric in exchange. Clara became a fervent supporter. "I've never seen the kids this engaged," she admitted. "Especially Billy Carter. He used to be a troublemaker. Now he helps the younger ones learn signs." Billy, a freckled 10-year-old, became Eleanor's most eager student. His nimble hands quickly mastered signs, and his natural empathy made him eager to help friends. "My pa says Mr. Tucker ain't as smart as other folks," Billy confided one day after class. "But that's not true, is it? He just talks different." "Your pa's mistaken," Eleanor replied gently. "Mr. Tucker is very smart. Sometimes people confuse speaking with thinking, but they're not the same." Billy nodded. "Like how you're quiet but know lots of things," Eleanor smiled. "Exactly," the boy decided. "I'm gonna teach Pa some signs. Show him better than tell him." One chilly Saturday morning in late October, Eleanor brought news of this development to Caleb's forge. He was crafting an ornate iron gate, his precision mesmerizing. Eleanor waited, admiring the strength in his movements. When he looked up and saw her, his face lit up. "Good morning," he signed. "You're early. I couldn't wait to tell you," she signed, excited. "The kids are teaching their parents signs. Billy's pa asked me how to sign good job for use at the mine." Caleb stared, his expression shifting from surprise to emotion. "Redstone Creek folks learning signs, just simple ones," she clarified. "But it's a start." He shook his head, amazed. "You've been here less than 3 months. We," she corrected, emphasizing we with care. Something shifted in his eyes, a vulnerability that made Eleanor's heart race. They stood still, the space between them humming with the unspoken. Caleb reached for the slate. "I never thought I belonged in Redstone Creek," he wrote. "Then you came." Eleanor took the chalk, her hand trembling. "I came to find a place to belong. I think I've found it." The moment was broken by Billy Carter, bursting into the forge with excitement. "Miss Eleanor! Mr. Tucker! Trouble at the saloon," he shouted, signing along with his words. "Mr. Caldwell's mad, saying awful things about you both. Eleanor's stomach tightened. What things? That you're wrong and the school's teaching devil's language. The boy looked worried. My pa told him to shut up, but Mr. Caldwell's drunk and has some rough men from the mine. Caleb frowned, grabbing the slate. What's happening? Eleanor explained quickly. Stay here, Caleb signed. I'll handle it. No, Eleanor said aloud, signing simultaneously. We go together. Caleb started to argue, but her resolve made him nod. They headed to town, Billy trailing behind. The Silver Spur Saloon dominated Main Street, light and noise spilling from its double doors. From a distance, Eleanor heard James Caldwell's voice rising above the din. Outside the saloon, a crowd gathered, drawn by the commotion. Billy's father, Henry Carter, broke away when he saw them. Miss Grayson, he greeted. Mr. Tucker, he turned to his son. Billy, I told you to stay put. Had to warn them, Billy replied stubbornly. Henry sighed, addressing Eleanor. Caldwell's been drinking since noon. Started ranting that you're filling the kids' heads with devil's language, turning the town against decent folks. He glanced at Caleb. Said some worse things. Eleanor signed the translation for Caleb, his jaw tightening. How many men with him? She asked. 5 mine foremen, all drunk and rowdy. Henry looked concerned. The sheriff's at the Miller Ranch, settling a dispute. Won't be back till tomorrow. Caleb touched Eleanor's shoulder. You should go back to the school. It's not safe. We stay together, she signed firmly. They approached the saloon, the doors swinging open, and Caldwell appeared, flanked by 2 burly men. He was disheveled, his face flushed with liquor. He froze when he saw Eleanor and Caleb, a sneer curling his lips. The mute and the deaf, he called loudly. Come to see what real people are like. The crowd shifted uncomfortably, but no one intervened. Caldwell continued, I warned you Redstone Creek would swallow you. Instead, you stuff strange gestures into the kids' heads, making them turn against proper English. Eleanor felt Caleb tense, but she placed a hand on his arm, stepping forward. The children are learning to communicate, Mr. Caldwell. That's all, she held his gaze. Knowledge isn't a curse, Caldwell scoffed. Knowledge? You call that knowledge? Looks like witchcraft to me, talking with hands like savages. He pointed accusingly. You've bewitched half the town with your quiet ways. That's not true, Billy interjected suddenly. I still listen to my pa. I just know more now. Caldwell's eyes snapped to the boy, then to Henry. You let a woman and a deaf man tell you how to raise your kid, Carter. Henry stood taller. I let my son learn useful things, Caldwell. Respecting others is the most useful. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crowd. Caldwell's face darkened. She wasn't good enough to be my wife, he spat, gesturing at Eleanor. Not good enough for a real man. So she picks damaged goods. He glanced at Caleb. Can't even defend yourself, can you, Tucker? Need a woman to speak for you. Caleb remained composed, but Eleanor saw the tension in his frame. She began to sign, but Caleb took her hand, shaking his head. He stepped forward, pointing at Caldwell, then himself, then making a writing gesture. Caldwell's smile widened. What's he doing? Threatening me. He's challenging you, Eleanor translated, her voice tinged with satisfaction. Not to a fight, but to a test of skill. The crowd buzzed. Eleanor explained, translating Caleb's signs. He says you claim you're better because you can hear and speak. He challenges you to prove it through actions, not words. Caldwell blinked, thrown off balance. What kind of contest? Caleb looked at Eleanor, and she understood instantly. The autumn festival in 2 weeks. Mr. Tucker proposes each of you create an item for the auction. You with all your advantages and him with his disadvantages. The town will decide, Caldwell sneered. He's a blacksmith. I'm a mine owner. How's that a fair comparison? Then you'll win easily, Eleanor replied coolly. Unless your confidence is just talk. The challenge hung in the air and Caldwell, unable to back down without losing face, nodded. Fine. Let him try. It'll only prove what everyone already knows. A deaf man's worth half a normal one. Caleb extended his hand. Caldwell gripped it briefly, then turned away, muttering, "This isn't over." As Caldwell and his men disappeared, the tension dissipated. Henry clapped Caleb's shoulder. "Smart move." Caldwell's old bluster. "It'll be interesting to see." Eleanor signed the comment, and Caleb responded with a tight smile. As they walked back to the school, Eleanor asked, "Why did you challenge him?" Caleb signed. "Words are his weapon." "They can't be mine." "I needed to change the fight." Eleanor nodded. "But what will you make for the auction?" Caleb smiled. "Something that speaks without sound." That night, Eleanor sat by her window, gazing at the stars over the hills. The confrontation with Caldwell made her realize Redstone Creek wasn't just a place to seek acceptance. It was a place to fight to shape. The next 2 weeks passed in a whirlwind of preparation. Redstone Creek's Autumn Festival was the year's biggest event, with stalls selling apple pies, homemade jams, and crafts. Bands played lively tunes, children tossed hoops, and miners competed in axe throwing. But this year, all eyes were on the showdown between Caleb and Caldwell. Eleanor spent mornings teaching, afternoons helping the children prepare a special festival performance, a hymn combining singing and signing. The children, led by Billy, practiced with enthusiasm that filled her with pride. But her worry for Caleb grew. He worked late at the forge, refusing to reveal his auction item. "It has to be perfect," he signed when she asked. A week before the festival, Eleanor received a warning from Mrs. Whittaker, a kind widow who often brought baked goods to the school. "Be careful, Miss Grayson," she whispered, handing over a loaf of cornbread. "Caldwell's rallying Reverend Thompson against you and Mr. Tucker. Says sign language is improper, encouraging division over unity." Eleanor nodded, thanking her, but her heart sank. Reverend Thompson held sway in Redstone Creek. If he turned against them, the auction could become a battleground. The night before the festival, Eleanor visited the forge, bringing a basket of apple tarts. Caleb was working, the firelight illuminating his focused face. He looked up, smiling, but Eleanor saw the strain in his eyes. "Are you all right?" she signed. He nodded, but his hands hesitated. "Almost done," he signed, gesturing to a cloth-covered item on the workbench. "But I'm worried." "About what?" he wrote on the slate. "If I lose, they'll say it's because I'm deaf." "If I win, Caldwell won't stop." Eleanor touched his hand. "You're not fighting Caldwell. You're fighting for yourself." "For us." Caleb looked at her, his gaze softening. "You always know what to say," he signed. They sat by the forge, eating tarts, and for the first time, Eleanor felt not just an ally but part of something deeper. On the day of the Autumn Festival, Redstone Creek sparkled with banners and the scent of baked goods. Stalls displayed crafts, from wool blankets to hand-carved knives. A fiddle band played in the square, and children ran about clutching taffy. Eleanor arrived early to oversee the children's performance, but her heart was heavy. Caleb hadn't appeared. She'd gone to the forge before dawn, finding only a note and his auction item, a metal book engraved with sign language symbols, titled ** silent voice **. Caleb's note read, "Trouble." Caldwell's men came to the forge. "I'll try to make it. Take this to the auction." Anxiety rising, Eleanor brought the book to the square where Clara waited. "Have you found Mr. Tucker?" Clara asked. No, Eleanor replied. But I have his item. She gestured to the book. What's Caldwell bringing? No one knows yet. It's in that crate, and he won't let anyone near it. Mr. Hawthorne, the auctioneer, greeted Eleanor with curiosity. Miss Grayson, I was starting to think Mr. Tucker backed out. He's delayed, she replied, placing the book on the table. The auction starts on time. Noon, Hawthorne confirmed. The whole town's eager to see Mr. Tucker challenge Mr. Caldwell. Eleanor nodded, turning away, nearly colliding with Caldwell. He was impeccably dressed, his demeanor smug. Miss Grayson, he greeted mockingly. I see you brought Tucker's item. Very devoted. Is he ill? Eleanor's hands tightened. He'll be here, Caldwell smiled. I don't think so. Some people aren't suited for the public stage. He leaned closer. You picked the wrong man, Miss Grayson. I offered you a place of prestige. Instead, you chose a broken one. Anger flared. Mr. Tucker hears more with his eyes than you do with your ears, and speaks more truth with his hands than all your fancy words, Eleanor retorted. Caldwell's jaw tightened, but he smiled coldly. We'll see what Redstone Creek thinks. The children gathered for their performance, and Eleanor led them through the hymn, their small hands signing in sync with their voices. The effect was mesmerizing, sound and silence blending. The crowd applauded warmly, even Reverend Thompson softening. As the auction began, Eleanor stood near the display table, still searching for Caleb. Hawthorne announced, the moment you've all been waiting for. 2 special items in a test of skill and vision. He gestured to Caleb's book and Caldwell's crate. Caldwell revealed his item, a stunning Swiss music box, walnut inlaid with mother-of-pearl. He turned the key, and a delicate melody played with tiny figurines dancing. This music box, Caldwell declared, represents the beauty of civilization, the universal language of music that anyone with ears can cherish. The crowd gasped in admiration. Hawthorne turned to Eleanor. Now the item from Mr. Caleb Tucker. She stepped forward, unveiling the metal book. Sunlight hit its surface, casting shimmering rays. This is asterisk silent voice asterisk, she said, opening it to reveal intricately etched signs. Mr. Tucker believes communication transcends sound. This book is a bridge between worlds. Caldwell scoffed. A book no one can read, made by a man who can't hear. Fitting, he turned to the crowd. Which item represents Redstone Creek's future? Music that uplifts the soul or gestures that divide? The crowd hesitated. Then Emma, a small girl, stepped forward, tracing a sign. This is friend, she said, signing. And this is love. Billy and other children joined, interpreting the metal pages. It's like a key, Billy explained, so people who can't hear can still talk to us. Mrs. Thompson, the Reverend's wife, stepped up, trying the sign for welcome. Reverend Thompson examined both items. Music is beautiful, but it fades. This book gives voice to those without one. Both have value, but they're not equal. Caldwell bristled. That's absurd. Where's Mr. Tucker? Reverend Thompson asked. Before Eleanor could answer, a commotion erupted. Caleb appeared, clothes torn, face bruised, followed by Sheriff Daniels leading 2 of Caldwell's miners in shackles. These men locked Mr. Tucker in an old mine shaft, Daniels declared. Said Caldwell paid them to keep him from the festival. The crowd murmured disapproval. Caldwell paled. I had no part in this. They say otherwise, Daniels countered. Caleb stepped beside Eleanor and she signed. Are you all right? He nodded, eyeing the book now surrounded by children. Caldwell tried to recover. The auction is about the item, not the man. I disagree, Reverend Thompson said. The items reflect values. Mr. Caldwell brought imported beauty. Mr. Tucker brought a tool to connect people. Henry Carter opened bidding on Caleb's book at $25. Other parents joined, driving the price higher. Caldwell's music box received only a low bid. When the gavel fell, asterisk silent voice asterisk sold for a record sum, donated back to the school. As the crowd dispersed, Eleanor and Caleb stood alone. "You made it," she signed. "I promised," he replied, signing joy with care. Eleanor took his hand, heedless of onlookers. In that moment, words or signs were unnecessary. The festival's aftermath rippled through Redstone Creek. Caldwell retreated, his public humiliation eroding his influence. His music box was left behind, eventually bought cheaply by Mrs. Coleman. Eleanor and Caleb became symbols of authenticity and connection. The first snow blanketed Redstone Creek 3 weeks later, turning the town into a white canvas. One frigid morning, Caleb arrived at the school with a wooden box containing alphabet blocks carved with both letters and signs. The children cheered, calling them sign blocks. "For learning," Caleb signed. "For everyone," Eleanor looked at him, signing, "Thank you." "It's wonderful." That evening, Clara visited Eleanor's room, worried. Caldwell's petitioning the school board to ban sign language, saying it's confusing. He's offering a large donation to repair the school on condition they agree. Eleanor's hands tightened. "What does the board say?" "They're considering it." They meet tomorrow night. After Clara left, Eleanor watched the snow fall, resolved not to fight Caldwell's way. She would confront with truth in action. The next day, she went to the forge. Caleb heard her plan, signing, "We should go to the meeting together." The school board met in the church hall, 5 members facing parents and citizens. Caldwell sat in front with a teacher from Denver, Mrs. Langley. Eleanor and Caleb sat at the back, observing. Caldwell presented, his voice confident, "Redstone Creek deserves a modern school. Sign language wastes time from essential subjects." He gestured to Mrs. Langley. "I've brought a qualified educator to assess." Mrs. Langley recommends focusing on proven methods. Mr. Peterson, the board chairman, invited other opinions. Henry Carter and other parents supported Eleanor. Finally, Peterson called, "Miss Grayson, do you wish to speak?" Eleanor stood, Caleb beside her. She faced the crowd, taking a deep breath. "I came to Redstone Creek 6 months ago, rejected for being too quiet. Mr. Caldwell believes silence is weakness. I've learned its strength." She turned to Caleb. "From Mr. Tucker, I learned silence isn't empty. From the children, I learned curiosity overcomes barriers. From you, I learned community grows through understanding." She presented data. Since teaching signs, reading comprehension has risen 35%. Discipline has improved. "This is evidence." Peterson reviewed the papers, but Mrs. Langley objected. "These improvements may be temporary." "Then hear from the students," Eleanor replied. Caleb opened the door, and Billy, Emma, and 4 other children entered, sharing their experiences. Billy said, "Before Miss Eleanor, I was always in trouble. Now I help others with signs." Emma added, "I was scared to speak up. Signs help me be understood." Parents stood, recounting their children's changes. Eleanor concluded, "I'm not asking to reject Mr. Caldwell's money, only to separate it from conditions. Judge us by results." The board deliberated privately. When they returned, Peterson announced, "We accept Mr. Caldwell's donation, but reject the conditions banning signs or replacing teachers. Redstone Creek School will be a place where tradition and innovation coexist." Caldwell stood, furious. "If you reject my conditions, you reject my money," Peterson replied. "Some members will contribute personally, and Henry Carter is supplying lumber. Redstone Creek doesn't depend on one man." Mrs. Langley spoke unexpectedly. "I was wrong to think signs were frivolous. I'd like to discuss a consulting role." Caldwell reluctantly agreed to keep his donation. As the meeting ended, Eleanor and Caleb stepped into the snowy night. At the school's entrance, they paused, snow glistening on Caleb's shoulders. "Now what?" he signed. "Now we build," she replied. "Together," he added. Eleanor signed love, and Caleb responded with forever. They embraced, the language of their hug more eloquent than any words. In the spring of 1879, Redstone Creek School donned a new roof and an expanded classroom, built with Carter family lumber. It became a unique institution, where children learned both letters and signs. Caldwell ceased his opposition, and his music box played in the church. One May afternoon, Redstone Creek hosted Eleanor and Caleb's wedding. Under a canopy of willow branches, Eleanor wore a pale green silk dress. Caleb signed his vows, and she spoke hers aloud, creating a ceremony that blended two worlds. The children released paper birds etched with wishes in letters and signs. Billy Carter approached, announcing his family would travel to Pineville to teach signing. "Word of you has spread," Henry said. Caleb squeezed Eleanor's hand, signing, "Did you ever imagine this?" "No," she replied. "I just wanted to belong. Now I know belonging is creating a place where everyone is accepted." They climbed a hill overlooking Redstone Creek, glowing in the sunset. "It's beautiful," Eleanor signed. Caleb embraced her, whispering, "Yes, very beautiful." In the silence they shared, Redstone Creek, once hostile to silence, had found beauty in quieter ways of being. As May's sunset fell, Redstone Creek shimmered like a jewel amid hills vibrant with wildflowers. Eleanor Grayson and Caleb Tucker's wedding was not just a union of two people, but a symbol of a town that had learned to value what it once overlooked. Lanterns hung in the square swayed in the gentle breeze, their warm golden light illuminating the radiant faces of the townsfolk. Violins and banjos blended in a lively square dance, inviting everyone from children to elders to join the whirl. Eleanor, in her pale green silk dress, held Caleb's hand, feeling the music's vibrations through the wooden floor as they danced, his eyes gleaming with pure joy. The children, still exhilarated from releasing paper birds, darted around the square, waving colorful ribbons, while housewives swapped recipes for apple pie and strawberry jam, staples of Western festivals. But amid the joy, Eleanor felt a faint unease. James Caldwell, though reluctantly accepting the school board's decision, was absent from the wedding. His absence, rather than bringing relief, stirred worry. Caldwell wasn't one to yield easily, and his public humiliation at the autumn festival surely left a deep wound in his pride. She glanced at Caleb, signing animatedly with Billy Carter, and told herself today was theirs, a day Redstone Creek witnessed silence's strength. She wouldn't let Caldwell's shadow dim this happiness. As the sun set, leaving a star-filled sky, Reverend Thompson stepped onto a makeshift wooden platform, raising a hand for silence. "People of Redstone Creek," he said, his voice carrying across the square, "today we don't just witness a marriage but the start of something greater. Eleanor and Caleb have taught us that communication isn't just words, but understanding from the heart. In that spirit, I propose we build a small library beside the school, where Caleb's silent voice will be the cornerstone, and where all, young and old, can learn sign language alongside other knowledge." The crowd applauded enthusiastically, and Eleanor felt her eyes sting. Caleb took her hand, signing discreetly. "We did it," she smiled, replying, "No, Redstone Creek did." In the months following the wedding, Redstone Creek entered the summer of 1879 with renewed energy. The school, now called the Redstone Academy, became a hub of educational innovation in the West. Parents from nearby towns like Pineville and Copper Hills began sending their children, curious about the curriculum blending letters and signs. Eleanor, now Mrs. Eleanor Tucker, worked with Clara Bennett and Mrs. Langley, who had embraced her consulting role, to develop a balanced program where sign language was not just a subject, but a bridge to deeper understanding. Caleb's alphabet blocks became a beloved teaching tool, copied and sent to other Montana schools, spreading Redstone Creek's name far and wide. Caleb, meanwhile, became a respected figure, not only for his blacksmithing skill but for his quiet generosity. He spent evenings teaching sign language to miners and merchants, who joined initially out of curiosity, but soon saw its value in the noisy silver mines. His forge became more than a place for crafting metal. It was a community hub where people gathered to learn and share. Eleanor often visited, bringing cornbread or strawberry jam, and they sat by the forge as the sunset painted the sky red, signing about bigger dreams, a school for deaf children, a community where no one was left behind for being different. But peace in Redstone Creek didn't last forever. On a sweltering August afternoon, as Eleanor taught a small group of students to sign nature words, Clara entered the classroom, her face tense. "Eleanor, you need to hear this," she whispered, gesturing her to the hallway. "Caldwell's back from Denver. He's brought a big investor, Vernon Strathmore, and they're pushing to build a private school in the heart of Redstone Creek." Eleanor frowned. "A private school? For what?" Clara lowered her voice. "He says Redstone Academy isn't up to standard, that sign language is a farce, and we're wasting the town's potential. Strathmore has money, Eleanor. A lot of it. If they build a new school, they could poach our students and teachers." Eleanor felt a chill run down her spine. This wasn't just a new school, it was Caldwell's revenge, disguised as progress. "What does the school board say?" she asked. "They're divided," Clara replied. "Some see opportunity in Strathmore's money, especially with our tight repair budget. Others, like Mr. Peterson, want to preserve what we've built. They'll meet Friday to discuss." Eleanor nodded, her mind racing. She knew Caldwell wouldn't stop at a meeting. He'd use money, influence, and polished words to dismantle everything she and Caleb had worked to create. That evening, Eleanor shared the news with Caleb at the forge. The firelight highlighted the tension in his eyes. "He wants to destroy us," he signed, his movements sharp with anger. "Not us," Eleanor corrected, taking his hand to calm his fury. "He wants to destroy what we stand for, the idea that silence has value, that everyone deserves to be heard." Caleb looked at her, his gaze softening but resolute. "We have to fight," he signed. "But not his way." Eleanor nodded, and they spent the night planning, crafting a strategy not reliant on loud rhetoric but on the strength of community and the truth in their actions. The school board meeting on Friday evening filled the church hall, packed with parents, miners, merchants, and curious visitors from nearby towns. James Caldwell stood at the center, immaculate in a newly tailored suit, beside Vernon Strathmore, a tall, lean man with silver hair and eyes sharp as steel. Strathmore, introduced as a Denver tycoon, brought promises of prosperity. A modern private school with laboratories, a library, and teachers trained at prestigious Eastern institutions. Caldwell, his voice smooth as oil, laid out their plan. "Redstone Creek stands at a crossroads," he said, his gaze sweeping the crowd. "We can cling to an outdated school teaching oddities like sign language, or we can rise, building an institution to rival America's greatest cities. Mr. Strathmore is prepared to invest $20,000, but only if we commit to a modern vision, shedding unnecessary methods." The crowd murmured, some nodding, drawn by the prospect of wealth and prestige. Eleanor, seated in the back with Caleb, felt the weight of eyes on them. She realized this wasn't just a debate about education. It was a battle for Redstone Creek's identity, for what the town would choose to become. Mr. Peterson, the board chairman, stood, his voice calm but firm. "We appreciate Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Strathmore's offer. But we must also consider the value of what Redstone Academy has achieved. Does anyone wish to speak?" Henry Carter was the first to stand. "I'm a miner, not a scholar," he said, his voice carrying. "But I know my son, Billy, changed since Miss Eleanor came. He was a troublemaker. Now he's proud to help his friends learn. That's not odd, it's real education." Mrs. Thompson, the Reverend's wife, stood next. "I've seen the children at church signing hymns. It doesn't lessen them, it enriches them." Other parents spoke, recounting their children's progress, how sign language fostered empathy and patience. But not everyone agreed. A merchant, Mr. Baxter, objected. "I don't deny what Miss Grayson's done, but we need to think bigger. Strathmore's money could put Redstone Creek on the map. We can't pass that up." Caldwell seized the moment, standing with a smug smile. "I don't oppose Miss Grayson or Mr. Tucker," he said, his tone falsely conciliatory. "But we must put the town's interests above personal feelings. A private school will attract wealthy families, boost shop revenues, and elevate Redstone Creek's status. Sign language, while quaint, is a hobby, not the future." Strathmore nodded, adding in a dry voice, "I've reviewed Redstone Academy's curriculum. It lacks the rigor needed to prepare students for the modern world. We need properly trained teachers, not self-taught enthusiasts with peculiar ideas." Eleanor felt Caleb tense beside her, but she placed a hand on his arm, signing discreetly. "Wait." She knew her moment was coming. When Mr. Peterson scanned the room and called her name, Eleanor stood, feeling every eye on her. Caleb rose too, his presence a steady wall behind her. She stepped forward, smoothing her plain gray dress, taking a deep breath to calm her racing heart. The hall fell silent, only the wind whistling through the wooden window gaps. This was the moment to decide not just her and Caleb's future, but the soul of Redstone Creek. "Honored board people of Redstone Creek," Eleanor began, her voice soft but sharp, echoing in the quiet space. "When I arrived here nearly a year ago, I was a stranger, rejected for being too quiet, deemed unfit for a vibrant town like Redstone Creek." She paused, her eyes finding James Caldwell in the crowd. He shifted uncomfortably but couldn't look away. "Mr. Caldwell believed my silence was a flaw, that a woman must shout to be noticed, must flaunt to be respected. I understand him. In a town built on silver mines, noisy saloons, and boasts of success, silence seems like a sign of failure." She turned to Caleb, her gaze softening. "But then I met Caleb Tucker, a man who lives in silence not by choice, but because war stole his hearing. From Caleb, I learned that silence isn't empty. It's a space for understanding, for creativity, for connections deeper than any words." She faced the board, her voice growing stronger. "From Redstone Creek's children, I learned that curiosity can break any barrier. From you, through your acceptance, doubts, and even opposition, I learned that a community doesn't grow by forcing everyone to be the same, but by valuing what makes us different." Strathmore cleared his throat, but Eleanor pressed on undeterred. "Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Strathmore offer a private school with promises of prosperity. I don't oppose improving education or attracting investment. But I ask you, what is true prosperity? Is it grand buildings and prestige, or a community where every child, every person is given a chance to shine?" She gestured to a stack of documents on the board's table, reports she and Clara had prepared, detailing student progress. Since introducing sign language to the classroom, reading comprehension has risen 35%. Discipline issues have dropped by nearly half. Children once deemed unteachable now lead their classes. This isn't opinion, it's fact measured and recorded. Mr. Peterson flipped through the documents, his brow furrowed. "These numbers are impressive, Mrs. Tucker," he said, inadvertently using her new name, prompting a few smiles. "But Mr. Strathmore suggests these improvements may not be sustainable, and a private school would offer longer-term benefits." "I agree we must think of the future," Eleanor replied. "But the future isn't built by erasing what works. It's built by expanding, by combining the best of the past and present." She turned to Caleb, signing a brief request. He nodded, stepped to the hall's door, and opened it. A group of students entered, led by Billy Carter and Emma Miller. They lined up before the board, their cheeks flushed with excitement and nerves. "The children have prepared something to show you," Eleanor explained, stepping back. Billy spoke first. "My name's Billy Carter," he said, signing simultaneously. "Before Miss Eleanor taught us signs, I was always in trouble for talking too much. Now I use my hands to help friends, and I don't get in trouble anymore." Emma followed, her voice small but clear. "My name's Emma Miller. I was scared to speak up in class. Signs let me talk without fear, and people still understand me." Each child shared their story: a boy who overcame reading struggles through signs, a girl who bonded with her deaf brother, another who found joy teaching friends. When they finished, the hall was quiet, only soft murmurs of emotion from parents. Henry Carter stood. "My son used to come home angry," he said. "Now he comes home proud. That's what I want for every kid in Redstone Creek." Mrs. Thompson added, "Signs don't diminish the children, they enrich them, like the hymns they sign at church." More voices joined, their words forming a powerful chorus echoing through the hall. Eleanor watched the board, noting the shift in their eyes, skepticism giving way to reflection, rigidity to openness. Eleanor stepped forward one last time, her voice calm but powerful. "I'm not asking you to reject Mr. Strathmore's investment. Redstone Creek needs resources to grow. But I ask you to ensure that growth doesn't come at the cost of what makes us unique. Redstone Academy isn't just a school, it's proof we can progress without leaving anyone behind." She turned to Caldwell and Strathmore. "You speak of a modern future. I agree, but modern doesn't mean being like everywhere else. Modern is daring to be different, building a community where every voice, loud or silent, is heard." Caldwell's jaw tightened, but he didn't respond. Strathmore, for the first time, looked unsettled, as if realizing he'd underestimated this community's strength. Eleanor took Caleb's hand, signing, "We've done our best." He nodded, his eyes full of trust. The board retired to deliberate, leaving the hall in tense anticipation. Caldwell whispered urgently to Strathmore, while parents gathered around Eleanor and Caleb, offering words of support. Billy ran up, signing clumsily. "We did good, right?" Eleanor smiled, signing back, "Wonderful." The board returned after an hour, their faces unreadable. Mr. Peterson stood, clearing his throat. "This board has the responsibility to shape Redstone Creek's educational future," he began. "We've carefully considered Mr. Caldwell and Mr. Strathmore's proposal, as well as the input from Mrs. Tucker and the community." He paused, his gaze sweeping the room. "Redstone Creek has always prided itself on independence, on forging its own path. In that spirit, we've reached the following decision." The room held its breath. Eleanor felt Caleb's hand tighten around hers. "We welcome Mr. Strathmore's intent to invest," Peterson said. "However, we believe Redstone Creek's future lies in expanding what has proven effective, not replacing it. Redstone Academy will remain the primary public school, with a curriculum integrating sign language and traditional education. We invite Mr. Strathmore to work with the board to support facility expansion, but not as a competing private school. A cheer erupted, quickly silenced by Peterson's raised hand. Furthermore, he continued, we'll establish a community fund to ensure the school's sustainability without reliance on any single individual. Henry Carter and other parents have pledged contributions, and we believe Redstone Creek will continue to thrive in its own way. Caldwell shot to his feet, his face flushed. If you reject the private school, you reject Mr. Strathmore's money. Strathmore, unexpectedly, raised a hand to stop him. Mr. Caldwell, if I may, he said, his voice calm but sharp. I came here expecting an ordinary town. What I've seen tonight is extraordinary, a community that dares to innovate, to challenge convention. I want to be part of that. He turned to the board. I'm willing to fund Redstone Academy's expansion, no conditions attached. Perhaps we can discuss details next week. Caldwell was stunned, his confidence crumbling. He looked at Strathmore, then the crowd, finding no allies. With a stiff nod he sat, muttering, "Have it your way." A collective sigh of relief swept the hall. As the meeting ended, Eleanor and Caleb were surrounded by congratulations. Billy hugged her, signing, "We won." Eleanor laughed, signing back, "No, we built something." In the fall of 1879, Redstone Academy opened a new wing, with the small library Reverend Thompson had proposed. Caleb's silent voice sat on a glass pedestal, alongside books on Western history, literature, and science. His alphabet blocks were used across Montana, and some California schools began inquiring about Redstone Creek's model. Eleanor and Caleb continued their lives, not just as husband and wife, but as pioneers, shaping a community where silence and sound coexisted harmoniously. James Caldwell, though still owner of the Bright Star Mine, faded from public life. His music box, now in the church parlor, played during Sunday gatherings, a reminder that even the most beautiful things need a deeper purpose to endure. One October afternoon, as golden leaves blanketed Redstone Creek streets, Eleanor and Caleb stood on a hill overlooking the town. The saloon still buzzed, the silver mine still echoed with hammers, but now, woven among them, were signed conversations, smiles between those once divided by silence. "Did you ever think we'd change a whole town?" Eleanor signed, leaning into Caleb's embrace. He shook his head, signing, "I just wanted a place to live." "You made it a place to belong." Eleanor smiled, signing, "We did it together." Caleb pulled her closer, whispering into her hair with a voice he couldn't hear but she felt, "Forever." In that moment, Redstone Creek, once a land of noise and bravado, became a symbol of a profound truth. The quietest voices can echo the loudest if heard with the heart. The fall of 1879 passed in a new rhythm in Redstone Creek, where cool breezes swept through the fiery red hills, carrying the scent of dry leaves and wood smoke from the town's hearths. Redstone Academy, with its gleaming new shingles and newly opened library, became a beacon of educational innovation, not just in Montana but beyond. Caleb Tucker's signed alphabet blocks appeared in classrooms from Pineville to Copper Hills, and letters from California schools arrived, requesting to replicate Redstone Creek's unique model. Eleanor and Caleb, now a devoted couple, not only built a home but planted seeds of understanding, where silence was no longer a flaw but a powerful language. Yet Redstone Creek, though transformed, remained a town of contradictions. The prosperity from silver mines brought opportunity, but also fueled greed and rivalry. James Caldwell, despite retreating after his defeat at the board meeting, didn't vanish from the town's fabric. He remained the Bright Star Mine's owner, one of the region's largest, and his influence lingered in the noisy saloons and whispered conversations at the general store. Eleanor, though focused on teaching and warm evenings with Caleb, couldn't shake the sense that Caldwell was quietly biding his time for a counterstrike. One early winter morning, as snow began dusting the wooden rooftops, Eleanor was guiding a group of students through signing winter words: snow, fire, warm, when Billy Carter raised his hand, eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Miss Eleanor, is Mr. Caldwell building something big at the mine?" Eleanor paused, surprised. "Why do you think that, Billy?" The boy shrugged. "My pa said some miners mentioned Mr. Caldwell hired engineers from Denver, and they're digging something that's not silver." I overheard. The children giggled, but Eleanor felt a chill, not from the crisp air outside. She smiled at Billy, signaling the class to continue, but her mind drifted to Caldwell and his secretive plans. That evening at Caleb's forge, Eleanor shared her concerns. The firelight highlighted his rugged features and deep brown eyes. He paused his hammering, wiped sweat from his brow, and signed, "Caldwell never gives up. If he's building something, it's not just for money." Eleanor nodded, taking the small slate from his workbench. She wrote, "Billy said he hired engineers. It could be a big project, but why the secrecy? And why now after losing at the board?" Caleb read, his brows furrowing. He wrote back, "Maybe he wants to prove something. Or hurt us." Eleanor met his gaze, sensing the tension in his movements. "We need to find out," she signed. "Not to confront, but to protect what we've built." The next day, Eleanor and Caleb began investigating. They started at Mr. Baxter's general store, where miners gathered to drink coffee and swap news. The air was thick with tobacco and the scent of freshly baked biscuits, a Western morning staple. Baxter, a stout man with a bushy mustache, greeted them with a friendly smile but curious eyes. "Mrs. Tucker, Mr. Tucker, rare to see you both here," he said, sliding a plate of biscuits toward them. Eleanor smiled, taking one and signing thanks for Caleb. "We're just stopping by to chat," she said softly. "Heard the Bright Star Mine's got a big project." "Know anything?" Baxter shrugged, but his eyes flicked to a corner where miners whispered. "Just rumors," he said cautiously. "They say Caldwell's building a new silver processing plant, fancier than anything in Montana. Got engineers from Denver, and he's paying well to keep it quiet." Eleanor nodded, keeping her expression neutral, but her heart raced. A processing plant wasn't just business. It could reshape Redstone Creek, drawing workers, inflating prices, and straining public resources like the school. She glanced at Caleb, who signed discreetly, "Dangerous." On their way back, they stopped at the Silver Spur Saloon, where Henry Carter was taking a lunch break from the mine. Henry, with rough hands and a genuine smile, confirmed the rumors. "Caldwell's up to something big," he said, sipping beer. "Heard his plant will use steam-powered machines, imported from Europe. But he's not just building a plant, he wants the town to depend on it. Word is he'll open a mechanics training school, competing directly with Redstone Academy." Eleanor's stomach tightened. This wasn't just revenge. It was a bid to control Redstone Creek, from economy to education. Over the following weeks, tension gripped Redstone Creek. News of Caldwell's project spread, dividing the community. Some, like Baxter and a few merchants, were excited about the town becoming an industrial hub. Others, like Henry Carter and Mrs. Thompson, worried that reliance on Caldwell would erode Redstone Creek's unique identity. Redstone Academy, though thriving, felt the pressure. Some parents withdrew their children, lured by promises of steady jobs at Caldwell's plant. Clara Bennett, during a teachers' meeting, admitted to Eleanor, "We're losing students. If Caldwell opens his own school, we might not have the budget to keep going. Eleanor and Caleb knew they couldn't stand idle. They organized a community meeting at the church hall, inviting parents, minors, and anyone concerned about Redstone Creek's future. The space was packed, the air heavy with coffee and cornbread brought by housewives. Eleanor stood before the crowd, Caleb at her side, oil lamps casting light on her determined face. "Redstone Creek is our home," she began, her voice soft but resonant. "We've built a community where everyone, speaking or silent, has a place. But now we face a choice. Let one man control our future or shape it together." She outlined Caldwell's project, not just the plant but the training school, designed to rival Redstone Academy. "Mr. Caldwell promises prosperity," she said, "but that prosperity has a cost. If we let his plant and school dominate, we risk losing what makes Redstone Creek special, its diversity, its understanding, its commitment to every child, not just those who fit his plans." Caleb stepped forward, signing a brief message that Eleanor translated. "I'm not against progress. But progress shouldn't leave anyone behind. Redstone Academy proves we can grow while keeping our heart." The crowd's response was mixed. Henry Carter and Mrs. Thompson led applause, but others, like Baxter, raised questions. "Mrs. Tucker, I respect what you've done," Baxter said, "but Caldwell's plant will bring jobs." "We can't ignore that," Eleanor nodded. "I agree jobs matter. But we can attract investment without losing our identity. I propose we work with Mr. Strathmore and other investors to expand Redstone Academy, adding vocational programs within our school, so our children gain skills while keeping our values." The idea caught the room off guard. Strathmore in Denver had written expressing interest in further collaboration. Eleanor and Caleb had contacted him, proposing an expansion plan for the academy that included vocational classes like blacksmithing, mechanics, and woodworking, integrated with sign language to ensure inclusivity. "We don't have to choose between past and future," Eleanor said. "We can build both." The meeting sparked a wave of action. Parents and minors formed a community committee, led by Henry Carter, to work with Strathmore and other investors. They sent letters to neighboring towns, inviting support for Redstone Creek's educational model. Meanwhile, Caldwell accelerated his project. His plant rose at the town's edge, black smoke billowing from test chimneys. His training school, dubbed the Bright Star Institute, opened with a lavish ceremony, inviting Denver reporters and a photographer to document the event. Caldwell's speech avoided direct mention of Eleanor or Caleb, but hinted that outdated ideas would soon be replaced by modern vision. Eleanor and Caleb, though concerned, didn't let Caldwell's spectacle deter them. They focused on strengthening Redstone Academy, hosting open classes to show parents and workers how sign language integrated with academics. Billy Carter and Emma Miller, now stellar students, led peer groups in demonstrations, signing Western folk songs like "Oh Susanna" and "Home on the Range." These events, paired with traditional fare like apple pie and barbecue, drew large crowds, reinforcing community strength. The battle's climax came in the spring of 1880, when Redstone Creek held an education fair, proposed by the community committee to showcase Redstone Academy's achievements and attract further investment. The fair sprawled across a large field outside town, with colorful tents, stalls selling cornbread, strawberry jam, and crafts. A band played square dance tunes, minors competed in axe throwing, and children raced in sack games. The centerpiece was Redstone Academy's exhibition, where students presented projects blending academic knowledge and signing. Caldwell, unwilling to be outdone, held a competing event at the Bright Star Institute, inviting investors and reporters to view modern machinery and technical classes. He sent invitations to every Redstone Creek family, promising scholarships for those who enrolled their children. Eleanor and Caleb knew this was their final chance to prove Redstone Academy's worth. They worked tirelessly, preparing a special performance, a short play by students, telling Redstone Creek's story through speech and signs, paired with a signed chorus of Sweet Betsy from Pike. On fair day, the sky was clear blue, and Redstone Creek buzzed with unprecedented crowds. Investors, led by Vernon Strathmore, arrived from Denver, alongside reporters and representatives from other schools. Eleanor, in a simple pale green dress, stood on a wooden stage, Caleb beside her, as the students began the play. It told of a town divided by differences, but united through understanding. Billy Carter played a miner, Emma Miller a teacher, and other students signed dialogue, creating a performance both moving and powerful. As the chorus rose, small hands signing Sweet Betsy from Pike, the crowd stood, applauding, many wiping tears. Strathmore at the front turned to Eleanor and Caleb after the performance. "I've seen many schools," he said, "but never one like this. You don't just teach knowledge, you teach how to live." He pledged an additional $10,000 to expand Redstone Academy, including Eleanor's proposed vocational classes. Reporters captured every detail, and subsequent articles hailed Redstone Creek as the educational gem of the West. Caldwell's event, though grandiose, couldn't compete with the fair's draw. The Bright Star Institute attracted some investors, but most left to join the community fair. Caldwell, standing alone by his gleaming steam engine, realized he'd lost, not for lack of money or vision, but because he didn't understand Redstone Creek's heart. He shuttered the Bright Star Institute months later, refocusing on his mine and leaving town for new opportunities in Denver. In the summer of 1880, Redstone Creek entered a new era. Redstone Academy expanded into a campus with 3 buildings, including a vocational workshop, where Caleb taught blacksmithing and signing to apprentices. Eleanor became principal, working with Clara and Mrs. Langley to build a nationally recognized curriculum. Caleb's alphabet blocks were published as an official teaching kit, and silent voice became a symbol of inclusion. Eleanor and Caleb, now parents to a baby girl named Abigail, continued living in the companionable silence that bound them. Abigail, with her mother's blue eyes and father's smile, learned to sign before speaking, her tiny hands weaving stories before she could read. One August afternoon, as they stood on a hill overlooking Redstone Creek, Eleanor signed, "What have we built?" Caleb smiled, signing, "A home. Not just for us, but for everyone." He drew her close, and as the sunset gilded the town, Redstone Creek, once a land of noise and bravado, stood as proof that the quietest voices could change a world. The summer of 1880 brought a fresh breeze to Redstone Creek, as the town not only preserved its identity, but became a symbol of educational innovation in the American West. The dusty red roads now buzzed more than ever, not just with the clatter of hooves and the hammers of silver mines, but with children's laughter and signed conversations weaving through saloons, shops, and the church hall. Redstone Academy, with its newly expanded campus, became a gathering place for curious minds from across Montana, drawing students and teachers from distant towns like Pineville, Copper Hills, and even Helena. Caleb Tucker's signed alphabet blocks became iconic, ordered by schools throughout the West, and his metal book, silent voice, displayed in the Academy's small library, served as a reminder that silence could resonate louder than any spoken word. Eleanor Tucker, now principal of Redstone Academy, worked tirelessly with Clara Bennett and Mrs. Langley to refine the curriculum, blending sign language with traditional subjects like arithmetic, literature, and Western history. New vocational classes, from blacksmithing to woodworking, attracted both students and adults, transforming the school into a hub for practical skills as well as knowledge. Caleb, with his rough but deft hands, led the vocational workshop, teaching apprentices to forge iron and sign with equal patience and precision. In the evenings, he and Eleanor often sat by the forge under a fiery sunset, sharing dreams of something greater, a dedicated school for deaf children, a community where no one was sidelined for being different. But amid the glow of success, shadows still lingered. James Caldwell, though he had left Redstone Creek for Denver after the Bright Star Institute's failure, hadn't entirely vanished from the town's life. His letters arrived through business associates, sowing whispers of new projects that could threaten Redstone Creek's stability. One September afternoon, as Eleanor guided students through signing autumn words, golden leaves, cold wind, harvest, Henry Carter entered the classroom, his face tense. "Eleanor, we need to talk," he said, his voice low but urgent. She signaled Clara to take over, leading Henry to the hallway. "Caldwell's coming back," Henry said once they were out of earshot. "Got word from a friend in Denver. He's partnering with a railroad company to build a line through Redstone Creek. They want to make the town a hub for silver shipments, and Caldwell's lobbying to control land around the Bright Star mine." Eleanor's heart pounded. A railroad could bring unprecedented prosperity, but if Caldwell held the reins, he'd wield power to shape the town's future, from economy to community. "What does he want?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Henry frowned. "Power. He wants Redstone Creek to depend on him, like he tried with the plant. And I hear he's spreading rumors that Redstone Academy's a barrier to progress, that sign language makes the town look backward to investors." Eleanor's hands clenched, anger flaring. This wasn't just business. It was Caldwell's final attempt to erase the legacy she and Caleb had built. "What do we do?" she asked. Henry sighed. "We need to rally the community like before. But this'll be tougher. A railroad's a dream for a lot of folks here. Jobs, money, prestige. If we oppose Caldwell, some might turn against us." Eleanor nodded, her mind racing with possibilities. She knew they couldn't confront Caldwell head-on. He had money, connections, and a knack for manipulation. But she also knew Redstone Creek had something Caldwell never grasped, the heart of a community ready to fight for what was right. That evening, Eleanor and Caleb sat by the forge, the firelight casting dancing shadows on their faces. She recounted Henry's news, her hand signing faster than usual, mirroring her inner anxiety. Caleb listened, his eyes darkening with each detail. "He won't stop," he signed, his movements sharp with anger. "He wants to destroy everything we've done." Eleanor took his hand, calming his fury. "Not destroy," she signed. "Control. But we won't let him win." "Not his way." Caleb met her gaze, his expression softening but resolute. "What do we do?" he asked. Eleanor picked up the slate, writing, "We show Redstone Creek is stronger than he thinks. We hold a community conference, inviting the railroad investors. We prove Redstone Academy isn't a barrier, it's an asset." Their plan took shape over the following days. Eleanor and Caleb worked with Henry Carter, Mrs. Thompson, and the community committee to prepare a major event, not just a meeting, but an educational and cultural festival to showcase Redstone Creek's strength. They sent invitations to railroad investors, including Strathmore, now a trusted ally, and to neighboring towns, inviting them to witness Redstone Academy's unique model. The festival would feature student performances, stalls selling crafts and Western fare like cornbread, barbecue, and strawberry jam, and traditional contests like axe throwing and sack races. The centerpiece would be Eleanor's speech, signed simultaneously by Caleb, to convince investors that Redstone Creek could be a railroad hub without sacrificing its identity. Meanwhile, Caldwell returned to Redstone Creek with his usual flair. He rented a temporary office in the town center, hanging a sign for Bright Star Railroad Company, and holding meetings with merchants and miners, promising jobs and profits if they backed his project. He also spread rumors, calling Redstone Academy a school for eccentrics, and implying Eleanor and Caleb were stunting the town's growth. Some, like Baxter, were swayed by Caldwell's promises, but others, like Henry Carter and Mrs. Thompson, stood firm with Eleanor and Caleb. The educational and cultural festival took place on a late October day, when the hills around Redstone Creek blazed with autumn's gold and red. The large field outside town was adorned with banners and lanterns, colorful tents springing up like mushrooms, offering everything from hand-woven blankets to taffy. A band played square dance tunes, and the aroma of barbecue and apple pie wafted through the air, sending children running with sugar-sticky mouths. Miners competed in axe throwing, while housewives swapped jam recipes and showed off golden cornbread. But all eyes turned to the wooden stage at the center, where Redstone Academy would perform. Caldwell, refusing to be outdone, held a rival event at his office, inviting railroad investors and reporters to view a railroad model and hear his speech on Redstone Creek's industrial future. He sent letters to every family, promising free whiskey and job opportunities for attendees. Eleanor and Caleb knew this was a make-or-break moment, not just for Redstone Academy, but for the town's soul. On the morning of the festival, Eleanor stood before the mirror in her small room behind the school, smoothing her simple pale green dress. Caleb entered, wearing a clean white shirt and dark trousers, his rough hands gently touching her shoulders. "You're nervous," he signed, his eyes searching her face. Eleanor smiled faintly, signing, "I'm afraid we're not strong enough." "Caldwell has money, fancy words." Caleb took her hand, signing slowly, "We have the truth. And we have each other." His simple words, conveyed through careful movements, gave her strength. They stepped onto the stage together, ready to face their greatest challenge yet. The festival began with student performances. Billy Carter and Emma Miller led a group of children in a short play recounting Redstone Creek's history, from the early days of miners to the rise of Redstone Academy. The dialogue was spoken and signed simultaneously, creating a performance both moving and eloquent. The crowd, including investors like Strathmore and Denver reporters, stood to applaud, many touched by the blend of sound and silence. Next came a chorus, with students signing the folk song Clementine, their small hands moving like wings, bringing the story to everyone, even those who couldn't hear. As the sun climbed, Eleanor took the stage, Caleb at her side. The crowd hushed, eyes fixed on them. "People of Redstone Creek, honored guests," she began, her voice soft but sharp, carrying across the field. "Today, we gather not just to celebrate, but to decide our town's future. Redstone Creek stands at a crossroads. We can become a railroad hub, bringing jobs and prosperity, but the question is, how will we do it?" She paused, her gaze sweeping the crowd, finding James Caldwell at the edge, his face cold. "Mr. Caldwell believes the future lies in machines and money, that we must shed what makes us different to fit the world," she continued. "I respectfully disagree. Redstone Creek isn't just a mining town. It's a community where everyone, speaking or silent, has value. Redstone Academy proves we can progress without sacrificing our heart." Caleb signed her words, each movement strong and precise, as if forging iron on an anvil. "We don't oppose the railroad," Eleanor said. "We welcome it. But we propose a different vision, a Redstone Creek where the railroad doesn't just carry silver, but ideas, inclusion, and opportunity for all. She gestured to the students lined up behind the stage. These children are our future. They learn arithmetic, literature, and signs, not to be different but to be better. They learn to listen with their eyes, speak with their hands, and understand with their hearts. That's the Redstone Creek I believe in, a town rich not just in silver but in spirit. The crowd applauded, but Eleanor wasn't done. She turned to Strathmore, who listened with a serious expression. "Mr. Strathmore, honored investors, I invite you to join us, not to change Redstone Creek but to elevate it. Redstone Academy is ready to expand, with vocational classes and training programs, to prepare our children for a modern world while preserving the values that make us unique." Caldwell, unable to stay silent, stepped forward, his voice booming like thunder. "Mrs. Tucker speaks well," he said, a sneer curling his lips. "But let's be practical. The railroad needs land, workers, a town ready to embrace the future. Redstone Academy, with its strange gestures and outdated ideas, will drive investors away. I propose a modern Redstone Creek with a real training school where our children learn to operate machines, not wave their hands like savages." A few in the crowd nodded, but many frowned, displeased with his insult. Eleanor didn't flinch. "Mr. Caldwell, you speak of modernity, but you forget that modernity isn't erasing the past," she replied, her voice calm but cutting. "Redstone Academy doesn't teach children to be savages. We teach them to be human, with empathy and creativity. If you think that's outdated, perhaps you don't truly understand Redstone Creek." Caleb signed her words, and for the first time, some in the crowd mimicked the signs, as if aligning with them. Henry Carter stood, his voice carrying. "I'm a miner, not a scholar, but I know my son, Billy, is a better man because of Miss Eleanor and Mr. Caleb. I want the railroad, but I want it our way, not Caldwell's." Mrs. Thompson rose next. "I've seen the children sign hymns at church. It doesn't lessen them, it enriches them." More parents spoke, their voices forming a powerful chorus. Strathmore, observing, finally stood. "People of Redstone Creek," he said, his voice dry but sincere. "I came to assess economic potential. What I've seen is a community with vision beyond profit. I commit to investing in the railroad through Redstone Creek, on the condition that Redstone Academy is supported to expand. I believe a town that values difference will be a stronger hub than any factory." Caldwell, face flushed, tried to protest, but the applause drowned him out. The crowd stood, cheering, and the students rushed the stage, hugging Eleanor and Caleb. Billy signed rapidly. "We won," Eleanor laughed, signing back. "We built." As the festival continued with square dances and bustling stalls, Caldwell left, his figure fading into the sunset. He didn't return to Redstone Creek after that day, and his railroad project was handed to a new company working directly with the community committee. In the spring of 1881, Redstone Creek entered a radiant era. The railroad's completion made the town a bustling hub, but not under any single person's control. Redstone Academy added another building, housing a vocational school and a dedicated class for deaf children, taught by Eleanor and Caleb. Abigail, their 3-year-old daughter, ran through the schoolyard, her tiny hands signing tales of cat and son with innocent joy. One May afternoon, as wildflowers bloomed across the hills, Redstone Creek held a celebration, not just for the railroad, but for a community that had stood firm through trials. Under a willow canopy, Eleanor and Caleb stood with students, signing "Home on the Range" as a band played softly. The crowd, from miners to merchants, joined in signing, creating a sea of moving hands, a wordless song of unity. As the sun set, Eleanor and Caleb climbed the hill overlooking Redstone Creek, Abigail asleep in her father's arms. "What have we built?" Eleanor signed, her eyes gleaming. Caleb smiled, signing, "A world where everyone is heard." He drew her close, and as the sunset gilded the town, Redstone Creek, once a land of noise and bravado, stood as proof that the quietest voices could change an era. The spring of 1881 in Redstone Creek brought not only vibrant wildflowers and warm breezes from the fiery red hills, but marked a new era for a town once seen as a place of noise and bravado. The newly completed railroad transformed Redstone Creek into a bustling transit hub, with train cars carrying silver and goods from Montana to major eastern cities. The dusty red roads rang with the rumble of wheels, train whistles, and signed conversations, as Redstone Academy's sign language became an inseparable part of town life. Saloons still hummed with laughter and clinking beer glasses, but now, amid banjo and fiddle tunes, miners could be seen signing tales of their shifts, while children played in the streets, their hands shaping words like friend and joy. Redstone Academy, its expanded campus of 3 gleaming wooden buildings, was no longer just a school but the heart of the community. Vocational classes, from blacksmithing to woodworking, drew young people and miners seeking new skills. The dedicated class for deaf children, led by Eleanor and Caleb, became a beacon, attracting families from across Montana and even Wyoming, seeking a place where their children were understood and respected. Caleb's signed alphabet blocks were widely published, an asterisk silent voice asterisk, his intricate metal book, sat in a glass case in the Academy's library, a legacy of inclusion. Eleanor Tucker, as principal, became a symbol of perseverance and innovation. She worked with Clara Bennett and Mrs. Langley to craft a curriculum admired by educators nationwide, blending sign language with subjects like literature, mathematics, and Western history. Evenings found her at the kitchen table in their small home, preparing lessons or answering letters from distant schools inquiring about integrating signs into classrooms. Caleb, with his quiet strength, spent days at the vocational workshop, teaching apprentices not only to forge iron, but to communicate with hands, turning the forge into a community hub. Abigail, their 3-year-old daughter, was their greatest joy, her green eyes sparkling like her mother's and her smile radiant like her father's. She signed before speaking, her tiny hands weaving tales of cat and sun, bringing laughter to Eleanor and Caleb in quiet moments. But even in the light of success, Eleanor couldn't shake the sense that challenges lingered. James Caldwell, though gone from Redstone Creek after his railroad defeat, left a legacy of division. Those who once supported him, like Baxter and some merchants, still whispered of missed opportunities, and some miners, lured by high-paying jobs in Denver, began leaving town. Moreover, the railroad, while bringing prosperity, introduced new strains, rising goods prices, pressure on public facilities like the school, and the arrival of strangers, from investors to opportunists, forcing Redstone Creek to grapple with how to preserve its identity amid rapid change. One summer morning in 1881, as Eleanor was teaching a group of students to sign words about summer, sun, river, fishing, Billy Carter, now 12 years old and a head taller, raised his hand with a serious expression. "Miss Eleanor, is the town about to get in trouble?" Eleanor paused, surprised. "Why do you think that, Billy?" The boy shrugged, but his eyes betrayed worry. "My pa says some folks from Denver came, wanting to buy land near the school to build a big casino. They say it'll bring money to town, but pa says it could ruin everything." A chill ran down Eleanor's spine. A casino wasn't just a business matter. It could turn Redstone Creek into a hub of gambling and debauchery, overshadowing the values the Redstone Academy had built. "Who does your pa say is behind this?" she asked, keeping her voice steady. Billy shook his head. "Not sure, but I overheard Mr. Baxter talking to a stranger at the store. They mentioned Mr. Caldwell." The name Caldwell, though just a whisper, was enough to make Eleanor's heart race. She signaled for Clara to take over the class and led Billy into the hallway to ask more. "Did you hear anything else?" Billy nodded. "Mr. Baxter said the stranger was from a big company, and they want to turn Redstone Creek into the Las Vegas of Montana. I don't know what Las Vegas is, but it doesn't sound good." Eleanor gave a faint smile, ruffling his hair. "Thank you, Billy. You did well telling me," but as she returned to class, her mind churned. Caldwell, though gone, seemed to still find ways to leave his mark, and this time he was aiming for the heart of Redstone Creek, its community and values. That evening, Eleanor shared her concerns with Caleb by the forge. The firelight illuminated his face, highlighting the tension in his eyes as she signed Billy's story. "Caldwell," he signed, his movements sharp and angry. "He never lets us go." Eleanor took his hand, calming his fury. "It might not be him directly," she signed. "But if he's behind it, we need to act fast. A casino will change Redstone Creek, and not for the better." Caleb nodded, grabbing his slate. He wrote, "We need to know who's behind it. And we need the community with us like before." Eleanor agreed, but she knew this time would be harder. The railroad had changed the town, and not everyone wanted Redstone Creek to stay the same. Some, like Mr. Baxter, were swayed by the promise of money and glamour a casino could bring. The next day, Eleanor and Caleb began investigating. They visited Mr. Baxter's general store, where the scent of fresh coffee and baked biscuits filled the air. Baxter greeted them with a friendly smile, but his eyes held caution. "Miss Tucker, Mr. Tucker, what's special today?" he asked, pushing a plate of biscuits toward them. Eleanor smiled, signing thanks for Caleb. "We heard talk of someone wanting to build a casino in town," she said softly. "What do you know about it?" Baxter shrugged, but his hand paused while wiping the counter. "Just rumors," he said, his voice careful. "Some folks from Denver came, talking about investment. They think a casino will draw tourists, especially with the railroad." Eleanor nodded, but her eyes stayed on his face. "Who's behind them? Is it Mr. Caldwell?" Baxter faltered, glancing around as if ensuring no one overheard. "I'm not sure," he said, his voice low. "But I heard the company's tied to Caldwell. They're offering high prices for land near the school. I'd be careful, Miss Tucker. Not everyone wants Redstone Creek to stay as it is." Eleanor's stomach tightened, but she kept her expression calm. "Thank you, Mr. Baxter. We'll look into it." As they left the store, Caleb signed, "He knows more than he's saying." Eleanor nodded. "We need to talk to Henry and Mrs. Thompson. If this is Caldwell's plan, we have to act before it's too late." In the weeks that followed, Eleanor and Caleb worked with the community committee to gather information. Henry Carter, with his network of mining friends, confirmed that a company called Western Star Enterprises was buying land around Redstone Creek, with Caldwell rumored to be their secret advisor. Mrs. Thompson, influential in the church, discovered that the company had contacted school board members, offering large donations in exchange for supporting the casino. "They say it'll bring jobs and taxes," Mrs. Thompson said at a church meeting, her voice thick with worry. "But I see a trap. A casino will bring gambling, drinking, and all sorts of trouble. Redstone Creek will lose what we've built." Eleanor and Caleb knew they needed a bigger plan than before. A casino didn't just threaten the Redstone Academy, it threatened the town's soul. They proposed a community conference, but this time a grand event, inviting not only Redstone Creek's residents but also investors, reporters, and representatives from neighboring towns. The event would be a cultural and educational festival, showcasing what made Redstone Creek special: inclusion, creativity, and community strength. They called it Redstone Creek Pride Day, with student performances, stalls selling apple pies, strawberry jam and crafts, and Western contests like axe throwing and horse racing. But the centerpiece would be Eleanor's speech, signed by Caleb, to convince everyone that Redstone Creek could grow without sacrificing its identity. As Eleanor and Caleb prepared for the festival, Western Star Enterprises accelerated their plans. A group of representatives from Denver arrived, led by a man named Marcus Hargrove, dressed in an expensive suit with a slick smile. Hargrove held public meetings, promising that the casino would turn Redstone Creek into the Las Vegas of Montana, bringing jobs, tourists, and prosperity. He avoided mentioning Caldwell, but Eleanor recognized his style: flowery words, grand promises, and a subtle disdain for the town's values. Hargrove also approached school board members, offering funding for a new building in exchange for their support in selling land for the casino. The community grew divided. Mr. Baxter and some merchants publicly backed Hargrove, arguing that the casino would boost the economy. But Henry Carter, Mrs. Thompson, and most Redstone Academy parents stood firm, holding small meetings to rally against the casino. Billy Carter, with youthful zeal, began teaching his classmates to sign slogans like "Keep Redstone Creek Whole," and the students carried small signs with these signs around town, drawing attention and support. Redstone Creek Pride Day took place on a late August day, under a clear blue sky with hills shimmering in the sunlight. The large field outside town became a sea of color, with tents selling wool blankets, hand-carved knives, and Western foods like cornbread, barbecue, and taffy candy. A band played square dance tunes, and children ran about, holding balloons and mouths sticky with jam. Miners competed in axe throwing, while housewives vied for the best apple pie, with the winner receiving a blue ribbon from Mrs. Thompson. But all eyes turned to the wooden stage, where the Redstone Academy would perform. Hargrove, unwilling to concede, held a competing event at the Western Star Enterprises office, inviting investors and reporters to view a casino model and hear a speech about Redstone Creek's bright future. He sent invitations to every household, promising free whiskey and investment opportunities. Eleanor and Caleb knew this was the defining moment, not just for the Redstone Academy, but for the town's identity. On the morning of the festival, Eleanor stood before a mirror, smoothing her simple pale blue dress. Caleb entered, wearing a white shirt and dark trousers, his rough hands touching her shoulders. "You're nervous," he signed. Eleanor gave a faint smile, signing, "I'm afraid we're not strong enough." Hargrove has money, smooth words. And if Caldwell's behind him, Caleb took her hand, signing, "We have Redstone Creek. And we have each other." His words gave her strength, and they stepped onto the stage, ready to face the final challenge. The festival began with student performances. Billy Carter and Emma Miller led a group of children in a short play about Redstone Creek's journey, from a small mining town to an inclusive community where sound and silence coexisted. The dialogue was spoken and signed simultaneously, creating a moving and powerful performance. The crowd, including investors like Strathmore and reporters from Denver, stood to applaud, many touched by the blending of two worlds. Next came a choir, with students signing the folk song Shenandoah, their small hands moving like the river in the song, bringing the story to everyone, even those who couldn't hear. As the sun climbed, Eleanor took the stage, Caleb at her side. The crowd fell silent, eyes fixed on them. "Ladies and gentlemen of Redstone Creek, honored guests," she began, her voice small but clear, echoing across the field. Today, we gather to celebrate not just our past, but our future. Redstone Creek stands at a crossroads. We can grow as a railroad hub, but the question is, what do we want to become? She paused, her gaze sweeping the crowd, finding Marcus Hargrove, who stood at the edge with a smug smile. Some believe our future lies in a casino, in money and glamour, she continued. I respectfully disagree. Redstone Creek is more than a stop on the railroad. It's a community where everyone, speaking or silent, has value. The Redstone Academy proves we can progress without sacrificing our heart. Caleb signed her words, each movement strong and precise, as if forging an invisible sword. We don't oppose growth, Eleanor said. We welcome it. But we propose a Redstone Creek where growth doesn't come at the cost of our children, our families, or the values that make us unique. She gestured to the students, who stood in a line behind the stage. These children are our future. They learn to read, write, and sign, not to be different but to be better. They learn to listen with their eyes, speak with their hands, and understand with their hearts. That's the Redstone Creek I believe in, a town rich not just in silver but in spirit. The crowd applauded, but Eleanor wasn't done. She turned to Strathmore, who listened with a serious expression. Mr. Strathmore, honored investors, I invite you to join us, not to change Redstone Creek but to elevate it. The Redstone Academy is ready to expand, with trade classes and training programs, to prepare our children for a modern world while keeping the values that make us special. Hargrove, unable to stay silent, stepped forward, his voice smooth but sharp. Miss Tucker speaks movingly, he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. But let's be realistic. A casino will bring jobs, tourists, and taxes, things Redstone Creek needs to compete with big cities. The Redstone Academy, though charming, is a small idea, not comparable to the economic potential we offer. A few in the crowd nodded, but many frowned, displeased with his condescension. Eleanor didn't waver. Mr. Hargrove, you speak of economics, but you forget that a community isn't measured only by money, she replied, her voice calm but sharp. The Redstone Academy isn't a small idea. It's the spark that lit Redstone Creek, making us a place the nation looks to. If you think a casino will do that, perhaps you don't truly understand us. Caleb signed her words, and for the first time, some in the crowd mimicked the signs, as if aligning with them. Henry Carter stood, his voice booming. I've seen Redstone Creek change because of Eleanor and Caleb. I want jobs, but I don't want my son growing up in a town of gambling and drink. We can do better. Mrs. Thompson rose next. I've seen children sign hymns in church. A casino may bring money, but it will take our soul. More parents spoke, forming a powerful chorus. Strathmore, observing it all, finally stood. Ladies and gentlemen of Redstone Creek, he said, his voice dry but sincere. I came to assess investment potential. But what I see is a community with a vision beyond profit. I commit to investing in Redstone Creek, not for a casino, but for the Redstone Academy and community projects, to ensure this town grows in its own way. Hargrove, his face paling, tried to object, but the applause drowned him out. The crowd stood, cheering, and the students rushed the stage, hugging Eleanor and Caleb. Billy signed quickly. We won. Eleanor smiled, signing back. We protected our home. As the festival continued with square dances and bustling stalls, Hargrove and his representatives left, their casino plans dissolving like smoke in the wind. Reporters captured every detail, and later articles praised Redstone Creek as the heart of the West, a town that dared to stand for its values. In the fall of 1881, Redstone Creek entered a golden era. The Redstone Academy expanded with a new building, including a vocational training center and a dedicated school for deaf children, attracting families from across the West. Caleb's letter blocks were published as an official teaching tool, used in schools from California to Kansas. The silent voice became a symbol of inclusion, and Eleanor was invited to speak at an education conference in San Francisco, where she shared Redstone Creek's story with educators nationwide. Eleanor and Caleb, now parents to Abigail and a newborn son, Samuel, continued to live in the silent companionship that bound them. Abigail, with her endless curiosity, led her classmates in signing performances, while Samuel, though only months old, seemed to smile when his mother signed love. One October afternoon, as golden leaves fell across Redstone Creek streets, their family stood on a hill overlooking the town. The saloon still buzzed, the silver mine still echoed with hammers, but now, woven among them, were signed conversations and smiles between those once separated by silence. "What have we built?" Eleanor signed, her eyes sparkling as she looked at the town glowing in the sunset. Caleb smiled, signing, "A world where everyone is heard and no one is left behind." He pulled her into his arms, Abigail holding her father's hand, and Samuel sleeping in his mother's embrace. As the sunset bathed Redstone Creek in gold, the town, once a place of noise and bravado, became proof that the quietest voices could change an era, not just for one generation, but for all to come.